You ever sit there and realize you're tired, but you don't even know why? Not the kind of tired that sleep fixes. Something else. Something heavier. It's like you're doing everything you're supposed to do. You're showing up, handling your responsibilities, keeping things together. From the outside, it looks like you're fine, maybe even doing well. But when it's quiet, when there's no distractions, no noise, no one to perform for, something just feels off. And you can't fully explain it, because nothing is technically wrong. But at the same time, nothing really feels right either. So you tell yourself, maybe I just need to push harder. Maybe I need more discipline. Maybe I'm just overthinking. But what if it's not about pushing harder? What if the problem isn't that you're not doing enough, but that something inside you is still operating from a version of your life that doesn't exist anymore? Because the truth is, a lot of what you call your personality isn't actually you. It's patterns, learned responses, things you picked up without even realizing it. Ways of thinking, ways of reacting, ways of protecting yourself that made sense at one point. And if you're honest, you didn't choose most of it. You adapted. Maybe you learned to stay quiet because speaking up didn't go well. Maybe you learned to handle everything on your own because no one really showed up when you needed them. Maybe you became the strong one because there wasn't space for you to fall apart. And none of that makes you weak. It actually means you figured out how to survive in situations that weren't built for you. But here's the part no one really talks about. Those same patterns don't just disappear. They follow you into your work, into your relationships, into the way you see yourself. And over time, they stop feeling like something you learned and start feeling like who you are. I'm just like this. I don't rely on people. I don't get too close. I handle things on my own. It sounds like identity, but a lot of the time, it's just old protection. Protection that made sense once, but doesn't really fit your life anymore. And the weird part is, the more you rely on it now, the more stuck you start to feel. Because you're trying to grow while holding on to the same strategies you used just to get through. And eventually, those strategies stop protecting you and start limiting you. Quietly, in ways that are hard to notice at first. Until one day, you realize you're not actually moving forward. You're just repeating. Same patterns, same reactions, same outcomes, just in different situations. And that's when it hits you. Maybe the problem isn't out there. Maybe it's something you learned a long time ago that you never got the chance to question. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about. The thing about coping mechanisms is you don't realize you're building them when you're building them. There's no moment where you sit down and decide, from now on, I'm going to shut people out, or I'm never going to ask for help again. It doesn't happen like that. It happens quietly, over time, in small moments that don't seem that important at first, like the moment you tried to explain how you felt and got ignored, or the moment you needed support and it just wasn't there, or the moment you showed emotion and it made things worse instead of better. So your brain does what it's designed to do. It adapts. It starts connecting dots. Okay, when I do this, it hurts. So maybe I shouldn't do that again. And just like that, a pattern begins. Not because you're weak, not because something is wrong with you, but because you were learning how to survive with what you had. And honestly, it's kind of incredible. You found ways to protect yourself without even realizing it. You learned how to read the room, how to adjust, how to stay safe, even if it meant losing parts of yourself in the process. Maybe you became the one who doesn't need anyone, because needing people didn't feel safe. Maybe you became the one who keeps everyone happy, because conflict felt dangerous. Maybe you became the one who always has it together, because falling apart wasn't an option. And again, that worked. It got you through. But here's the part that's easy to miss. Your brain doesn't update automatically. It doesn't wake up one day and go, "Hey, things are different now. You can relax." No, it keeps running the same program. Over and over again. Even when the environment has changed. Even when the people are different. Even when you're no longer in that same situation. Because to your brain, familiar equals safe. Even if that safe is actually limiting you now. So what happens is, you grow up, your life changes, your environment changes, but your internal responses stay the same. And that's where the disconnect starts. Because on the outside, you're an adult. You've moved forward. You've built something. But internally, some of your reactions are still coming from a much younger version of you. The version that had to figure things out alone. The version that didn't feel heard. The version that learned to protect at all costs. And that version of you is still trying to do its job. Even now. Even when you don't need it to. And that's why some of your reactions feel automatic. Like you don't even think about them. They just happen. You shut down. You avoid. You overcompensate. You withdraw. You overgive. And afterwards, you sit there thinking, why did I do that? But in the moment, it felt natural. Because it is natural. It's just not current. It's outdated. And the problem isn't that you learn these patterns. The problem is, you never got the chance to question them. You just carried them forward into a life they were never meant for. And that's where things start to get complicated. So what does all of this actually look like now? Not back then. Now. In your current life. It's not always obvious. It doesn't show up as something dramatic. Most of the time, it looks normal. It looks like you saying, "I got it," when you clearly don't. It looks like handling everything on your own, even when you're overwhelmed. And on the surface, that looks like strength. People might even admire that about you. But if you're being honest, it's exhausting. Because deep down, you don't want to do everything alone. You just don't feel like you have another option. Or maybe it shows up differently for you. Maybe you're the one who avoids conflict. You keep things peaceful. You don't like tension. You'd rather just let things go. Even when something bothers you. So you stay quiet. You let things slide. You tell yourself, it's not a big deal. But over time, those small things start to build up. And before you know it, you're carrying resentment that no one even knows exists because you never said anything. Or maybe you're always the one giving. You show up for people. You listen. You support. You make sure everyone else is okay. But when it's your turn, when you need that same energy back, it's not really there. And instead of asking for it, you just tell yourself, it's fine, even when it's not. And that's the pattern. You keep pouring without ever really receiving. Not because people don't care, but because you never learned how to let them show up for you. And then there's another one that a lot of people don't talk about. You feel uncomfortable when things are actually going well, like everything is calm, everything is stable, nothing is going wrong, and somehow that doesn't feel right. So you start overthinking. You start expecting something to go wrong. You start creating problems in your head just to match what you're used to feeling. Because chaos, even though it's stressful, is familiar. And your brain would rather choose what's familiar over what's actually good for you. So even when life improves, your internal state doesn't catch up. And all of this starts to affect things in ways you don't immediately connect. Your relationships feel one-sided. Your work feels heavier than it should. You feel disconnected, even when you're surrounded by people. And the hardest part is, you can't always explain why. Because on paper, everything might look fine. But internally, you're still operating from patterns that were never designed for this version of your life. So you end up stuck in this weird space where you're doing everything right, but it still doesn't feel right. And that's when it starts to hit you. Maybe it's not about doing more. Maybe it's not about trying harder. Maybe it's about understanding what's actually driving your behavior in the first place. Because once you start seeing it, you realize, this isn't random. There's a reason you react the way you do. There's a reason certain things feel uncomfortable. There's a reason you keep ending up in the same patterns, even when you're trying to change. And that realization is where things start to shift. At some point, you have to stop and ask yourself, is this actually helping me anymore? Not back then, now. Because a lot of the things you rely on today feel like strengths. Being independent, being low maintenance, not needing anyone, always being in control. On the surface, those look like qualities people respect. But if you look a little closer, they come with a cost. That independence, it can turn into isolation. That ability to handle everything alone, it can quietly burn you out. That habit of not needing anyone, it can keep you disconnected from the very relationships you actually want. And the hardest part is, you don't question it, because it feels like who you are. So instead of asking, is this limiting me? You tell yourself, this is just how I am. And that's where the ceiling forms. Not an obvious one, not something you can see, but something you feel. You hit a point where no matter how much effort you put in, things don't really move forward. Your relationships don't deepen. Your work doesn't feel fulfilling. You don't feel as connected or as present as you expected to. And it's confusing. Because you're doing everything right. You're disciplined. You're responsible. You're showing up. So why does it feel like something is still missing? Because effort isn't the issue. The issue is the identity behind the effort. If the version of you that's showing up every day is still built around protection, then everything you do is going to be filtered through that. Even your growth. So you might chase success, but still feel empty when you get there. You might build relationships, but never feel fully safe in them. You might improve your life on the outside, while still feeling stuck on the inside. Because no matter how far you go, you're still operating within the same limits. Limits that were never meant for this stage of your life. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Some of the behaviors you're most proud of are the exact ones keeping you stuck. Not because they're bad, but because they were built for survival, not expansion. And survival has a ceiling. It's designed to keep you safe, not to help you grow. So if you never question those patterns, you don't just stay protected, you stay limited in how you connect, in how you express yourself, in how much you allow yourself to experience. And over time, that limitation starts to feel like frustration, like you're capable of more, but something keeps holding you back, and that something isn't out there. It's internal. It's the same system that once protected you, now trying to control a life it was never designed for. And until you see that clearly, you'll keep trying to push forward, while something inside you keeps pulling you back. The first step is noticing. Noticing your reactions. Noticing the habits you automatically fall into. The moments when you shut down instead of speaking up. The times you overgive without receiving. The moments you handle it all alone, when you don't have to. When you start catching yourself in those patterns, something shifts, because awareness, even just a little, breaks the autopilot. It doesn't fix everything immediately, but it makes space. Space to ask, do I really need to react this way? Is this protecting me? Or is it holding me back? Am I still acting from survival or from intention? And here's the thing. The moment you start questioning, you start choosing. Not blindly reacting. Not doing the same thing because it's familiar. Not letting the old version of you run the show. You start deciding who shows up in your life and how. You start deciding what to say and what to hold back. You start realizing that needing help is not weakness, that vulnerability is not failure, that asking for support doesn't make you less capable. It makes you more human, and it's uncomfortable at first, because letting go of old survival mechanisms feels like stepping into the unknown. The version of you that protected itself isn't ready to trust yet. It wants control. It wants safety. It wants what's familiar. And that resistance is normal. But here's the truth. Growth doesn't happen while clinging to what kept you safe. It happens when you start letting go, little by little, moment by moment. You notice a reaction. You pause. You choose differently. You set a boundary. You ask for help. You say no when you normally wouldn't. And every time you do, the ceiling cracks. Not all at once, not perfectly, but enough for light to come through. And that light is freedom. The freedom to be yourself, to show up fully, to move forward without invisible chains holding you back. The freedom to realize you are not defined by what you had to do to survive. You can finally operate from a place of choice, not survival, not fear, but agency. You're not broken. You're not late. You're not behind. You did what you had to do. You survived. You adapted. You protected yourself. And that took strength. Real, quiet strength. But survival is not the same as living. At some point, you have to put down the armor. Not because it failed you, but because you don't need it anymore. The version of you that had to stay small. The version of you that had to overcompensate. The version of you that learned to protect itself at all cost. It's time to leave them behind. Not to forget them. Not to erase them. But to step into the life they were never meant for. Because that part of you was built for someone else's world. And this is your world now. A world where you can ask for help. Where you can be vulnerable. Where you can slow down. Where you can choose. And every time you do, you reclaim a little piece of yourself, a little piece of agency you didn't even realize you gave away. It doesn't happen all at once. It's slow, messy, sometimes uncomfortable. But that's growth. That's freedom. That's life beyond survival. So when you feel stuck, when you feel frustrated, when you feel like nothing's changing, look inside. Not to blame yourself, not to fix yourself, but to see what you're still holding on to and ask, do I need this anymore? Because the answer can change everything. And when you finally let go, you don't just move forward, you step into who you were always meant to be.